Okay. Come on. Hello. We have some special guests here today with us.
Yes.
No,
not
not
yet.
yet.
It's supposed to be a
It's
surprise.
surprised.
Okay, hello.
Hello.
I am Charlie Simons, and this is
Charlie Simons, 103.9 The Fish. And we have a
Sometimes.
special guest today here. This is John Webb, Dr. John Webb. He looks like a doctor, doesn't he? I don't know if he really is,
Hit
but
that thing that says tag right there.
Tag.
Tags you.
tag.
There we go.
Tag. You're tagged.
John
Tag.
Webb.
Good to be
Pleasure.
here.
Tag this
He's
one too.
filling in for Pastor Kyle Thompson.
Yes.
And this is Pastor Michael Baggett from PTLB, which is ptlb.com.
Yes, and we
And
do
Principles to Live By.
Bridges in Roseville. Bridges is a ministry for single adults, all ages, all life stages. It's a place where we can grow our faith, we can deepen our relationships, and we have a lot of fun. On Sunday nights at 6 o'clock here at Life Community Church.
It is.
We're hosted by Life
Life
Community
Community Church, where is
Church.
that?
We're live. We're sitting in it right now.
Where
We're sitting in the
is it?
cafe. It's in Roseville, right off of Blue Oaks and 65. We also have Bridges if you're single on Thursday nights in Elk Grove at Impact Community Church. It's actually Sacramento. So Impact Community Church, Sacramento, Thursday nights at 7. Boardwalk. If you're married, we do the boardwalk for married couples all over the place. They come from all over.
It's kind of like walking the plank.
Yeah.
That's why you call it boardwalk.
Yeah. That's Tuesdays at 6:30. We start with dinner, homemade dinner, not like drive-through stuff. Yeah, that's good. So when you get married,
Makes me want to get
you
married.
You got a place. Well,
Do you
yeah.
have any takers? No, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
So last week, Pastor Michael Baggett,
Yes, dear. I mean, sir.
I must admit, your viewership was way up there on your page. Kyle's viewership way up, Bridges way up, my page down.
Oh, really? I didn't
Yeah.
notice.
Yeah, well, I did.
Okay.
And I know how to fix that. Anytime you have animals, people will watch. People will watch.
This is
You have animals. This is Spike. And this is Riley.
Spike and Riley. Welcome to the show, Spike and Riley. That's
My two
awesome.
boys.
Now you know if Charlie asks you out, he'll normally have his dogs with you.
Yeah, you must love dogs.
Yeah.
And the ranch lifestyle would be nice too.
The ranch life. Okay. Did you try farmersonly.com yet?
No, and you know why? I'm going to say a reason why, which might make some people angry, but it is what it is. I actually looked at that, and I was considering it, and then they had this whole male looking for male and female looking for female, and I went, no,
Oh, really?
I don't want to be on that site.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was
Sorry.
farmers only. So.
All right, so today, well, again, we have a special guest, John Webb, and today the topic of our conversation at Relationships 2.0 is emotional self-control. Emotional self-control. And the reason we're bringing this up is because, you know, I do a lot of counseling. Last week I had 19 appointments during the week. Two people canceled, so I had 21. Two people canceled, so I had 19. And yeah, this idea of emotional self-control is really a big deal. And as we start the show off, I just want to read a few passages to you that talk a little bit about self-control. In the Bible, if you look at your Bible in the New Testament in Galatians chapter 5, verse 22, it's really a profound truth. It talks about the fruit of the Spirit. We know this. In other words, when I'm really paying attention to God inside myself, then what happens is I get to exhibit, Charlie and John get to experience love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and then the last thing is self-control. But that's not only something that I give to other people when I'm on it, it's also something that I get to experience myself. So if I take up my past and my hurts and my selfishness and my materialism and whatever else, then I might feel disappointed or angry or frustrated or jealous or lots of different things. And so that's why the Bible makes a good point to say, listen, if the Spirit of God is with you, you're going to feel differently and you're going to help other people feel differently. That's just a profound truth here. In 2 Timothy, check this out. In 2 Timothy, see if this doesn't relate to today's times at all. It says this. Timothy, Paul says, you should know this, that in the last days there will be very difficult times.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
People will love only themselves and their money. They will be boastful and proud. They will be scoffing at God. They will be disobedient to their parents. You got teenagers? Yeah. They'll be disobedient to their parents and they will be ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. They will be unloving and unforgiving. They will slander each other, and they will have no self-control. They will be cruel, and they will hate what is good. And the problem with today is that as much as we love social media, we're broadcasting on social media. I love Facebook. It helps me connect with a lot of people. Social media is the new form of slander and demonstrates for a lot of people, it's where a lack of self-control can be demonstrated.
Amen.
So a lot of the damage that I've been dealing with in the last couple of weeks has been when people just kind of unload on Facebook. And it doesn't help you maintain your friends. It may feel good in the moment, but it really isolates you from other people when you're, Timothy, you know this, in the last days, things will be very difficult. People will love only themselves and their money. They'll be boastful, proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to the parents, ungrateful. They'll consider nothing sacred. They will be unloving and unforgiving, and they will slander others and have no self-control on Facebook.
What translation is that?
That's a California. That's a
it's
New
California
New
translation.
California.
Okay.
They will be cruel and hate what is good. So we have to watch that. And then the last it's a proverb, right? Proverb, Book of Wisdom. A person without self-control is like a city with broken down walls.
Ooh, wow.
And you understand that back in the day when this is written, your walls are what protected you. The walls provided for health on the inside while keeping the outside that was dangerous at bay. And so this illustration is really, really significant. So that said, we're going to talk about first, what is emotional self-control? What is self-control? What is emotional self-control? That's what we're going to talk about. Now, just one more thing before we get going. Some people call this boundaries. And this is a problem because we've been talking a whole lot about boundaries over the last, 10, 15, 20 years, but people still don't get it. So a boundary is also like, if somebody offends me, I can say, I don't want that anymore. I don't want to be in your presence. But also what happens inside of me, if I let that person have control over me with that offense, that's not boundaries. So it's one thing to say, John offended me, so I don't want John in my presence anymore. But if I hang on to that offense, that's not a boundary. I mean, the boundary is to guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life.
You're just walling yourself in.
Exactly, right? So we become victims in that. Now we have boundaries, but we're still victims.
Let me say hello real quick to Joel Walton, and I would love for you to meet him, and both of you. Joel Walton, this is what he does, is marriage and family counseling.
Oh, Joel knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're watching, Joel. Thanks for tuning in. And he knows Spike.
I didn't shower this morning, and he's digging it. All right. All right, John, what do you think?
Well, I'm following your outline here, and your first question was, what is emotional self-control? And emotional self-control is really knowing how to respond versus react. A reaction is impulsive, and it's generally just all emotion. We're responding, we're using our full mind. And we want to use that. When we're in our emotional mindset, our amygdala is down toward our brainstem.
What is?
Amygdala.
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 You have one of those?
I lost my amygdala in a motorcycle accident.
Well, our amygdala is what puts us in the fight or flight system. And it's controlled by the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is a computer
I used to hang out on that campus. I used to hang out. They had a great Reuben on rye sandwich there.
Well, it doesn't remember all our events in a life, and it doesn't remember all our traumas, but it remembers every emotion. It's a fantastic computer. It's designed to protect us, because if you have an emotion that's associated with a lion chasing you, that's a good emotion. So if you see a lion in the future, you know to run. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a protective emotion, but yet sometimes those file cabinets get pretty full, and they bring stuff up from long in the past. And so when we want to respond instead.
A bad memory hacked into that computer.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point.
Oh, it's good.
Good point, yeah.
That's the hippocampus.
Yep, that's it. And so what we're dealing with is we want to use the full mind in the frontal lobe so we can be rational.
What's that called?
Have the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is in the front of your brain.
Yeah, I know.
That's the frontal lobe.
Isn't there a bellum and an antebellum or something like that? Well, that's a country and western group. I'm sorry.
And so we want to be fully responding versus reacting. And so I'll give you an example of, and what happens when we're reacting, it's really triggers from our past. Now, let me give you an example of a trigger. I went through the Northridge earthquake in the 80s, and it felt like our house was in the palm of a giant, and he had it up in the air, and he was shaking it so violently, and it was loud, and I thought, if I don't get my family out of here within a very quick amount of time, it's going to turn to toothpicks, and it's going to bury and kill us all. And so, that's a long time ago, okay, in the 80s. But now, if I am in an area where I hear a loud bang and I don't see where it's coming from, I will jump.
Really?
Yeah, and my kids will laugh at me.
And now
Really?
I'm sure there's many veterans that are watching that
Oh, wow.
recognize PTSD.
Is that where PTSD comes from?
Traumatic
It's kind of
stress
similar,
disorder.
Huh.
but we all have triggers though, and so that's just an example of a trigger that I deal with.
Oh, gotcha.
And so we will always have triggers, and triggers can come from our environment. It can be from the kid that picked on us in 5th grade, or that ex-spouse or ex-girlfriend, boyfriend. It can be how maybe our dad treated us, but we've all got these triggers. We may have suppressed the actual memory of the event, but the triggers are still deep within our file cabinet,
So
and they can get resurfaced.
That's why a lot of couples are reacting to their current spouse as if they were the former spouse.
Yes.
Different person, but same kind of reaction.
Judging by those standards.
Exactly.
Judging somebody by the previous standards and what happened, what was the outcome to something that you had done again and again and again.
Well, see what we're doing, we're making that new spouse pay for the sins of our past
Oh,
people.
I've said that so many times.
And we
Make
don't
them
know
pay for the
it.
sins.
We don't know it.
Right,
Yep,
right,
yep.
gotcha.
And it's not fair to the new person.
No.
And it's not fair to the relationship either.
Yeah.
And we're not aware of it. And so Dr. Julie Gottman says triggers are emotional vulnerabilities, and we all have those. And so our goal is to turn down the emotional thermostat. And I know we have a very quick show today, but by the time we get to the end, I want to talk about how to do that, because that's really the most important.
May I tell you, you're way too smart for this show. I'm just going to go right out and say that.
John, he
Very
improved the average IQ. here. Well, Kyle's
Get
pretty
in the
smart.
shot. Get in the shot. Come over a little
Kyle's
bit.
pretty smart.
Move
too.
over.
Hello.
To the left.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
There you go. Get cozy.
yeah. So that's a good description of what is emotional self-control. And again, I would say this: the light, the yellow or light that tells you if you're out of control is, again, if somebody's offended you and you're carrying it around. And what yesterday in particular, I had 2 different meetings where the offense was here. It was like, okay, everything's fine, and the offense was here, but the emotional reaction was way up here. I mean, both people were
It's like,
way,
whoa, dial it down.
way intense, and that was all emotion. It was nothing fact-based. There was no real big deal. It was just a little deal that got way out of control.
Well, I was in a situation like that 3 months ago, and I was not rude to the person, but I just lacked the patience with them. I wasn't emotionally present. I wasn't really empathetic. I was just like talking the facts with them, which comes across kind of harsh.
Yeah.
And I thought about that later, and I go, golly, I should have been more patient. And I thought, it really wasn't this individual. Maybe 10% of it was, but 90% of it was I was still mad at that client I had to deal with yesterday. And so I am projecting the experience with yesterday's customer
Yeah.
and the bad time he gave me, and making my new customer today have to pay for that.
Yeah. All right, so here's our next question. And you can throw your own definitions. We'd like to see if you want to chime in and go, hey,
Please do.
how would you describe emotional self-control? Again, boundaries it's just too vague. I mean, boundaries, some people I know, Michael, I've been in boundaries classes 3 different times. Well, what they're learning is barriers. They're putting barriers in relationship, but they're not really having any boundaries on their emotions as a result of somebody's behavior or offense or whatever. So the second question is, how does your lack of self-control, how does your lack of emotional self-control affect you? Like, how does my lack of emotional self-control affect me?
This is whole withholding bad feelings, burying them deep down, or just through anger and what it does to your body physically and your mind.
Yes. That can cause a lot of stress. That can cause a lot of anger. It can cause depression. It can isolate you from people that
Health
really-
problems,
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
yes.
Stomach.
Physical problems. There's a lot
Neck.
of different things. So in other words, too, and I've said this at Bridges too. I said this tongue in cheek. I was, mostly joking, But I said, some of you, you walk in here, you want to meet people, but your face says you're not approachable. And
That's
so
not
part
how
of
you said it.
that's not how I said it.
No,
I said,
it was even funnier.
but you know what I mean? Like your whole face says, don't talk to me, don't touch me. And there's because of the lack of self-control, maybe dealing with other things, you come in and you wear whatever somebody else, did to you or how you felt about that interaction in the past.
I remember you said you come in here wanting to meet people, but you forgot to tell your face. That's I think what you said.
So how would you say, what is your lack of self-control due
Professor?
to yourself?
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to react and we're going to bring the past into the current situation. We're going to make things worse.
With the other person?
Yes, with the new person. We're going to make
Okay,
it much
but
worse
how,
for the new
but
person.
how does it make it worse for you?
Well, because I'm part of the relationship. And so when I'm part of the relationship, it's going to affect both of us. And what I find is when we make things worse, the process itself is more damaging than the initial event.
Oh.
I bet you've seen that a million
Oh,
times. I mean, that's where they come up, the mountain out of the molehill. So
Yeah.
we've got something that's a disagreement or a conflict with another person, but because someone is overreacting and they're
Wow.
firing off emotionally and now they're pressing the buttons on the other person, it is now a much larger challenge to deal with. They made it worse.
It's funny because I was dealing with a couple this week and I literally asked her, I said, do you love him? She said, yes. I said, do you want to spend the rest of your life with him? Yes. I said, well, you don't act like it. And I said to him, do you love her? Yes. Do you want to spend the rest of your life with her? And he said, yes. I said, well, you don't act like it. And what has happened was, you're right, there's been this series of little conflicts, and they were both intense, and then with every conflict, it just made the next one even more intense. And in the last few years, I mean, they've made things so bad, it's really unbelievable. But it wasn't just one interaction, there was several, and they just grew with intensity. And now, I mean, it's going to take a lot of work to get back.
Not having the education, but having the life lessons. Unfortunately, in my last failed marriage, it was awful. Awful that it came to an end, but it was the withdrawing and the punishing.
Oh,
and-
self-punishing.
No.
Oh.
No.
Oh, never mind.
Withdrawing, punishing behavior.
Stonewalling.
attitude. Thank you.
4 Horses of the Apocalypse.
And then it just
Apocalypse.
if you don't
yeah, that's
end that
by
and fix
Dr.
it-
John Gottman.
If you don't
What
end
are
it
the
and
4
fix it-
horses?
The 4 Horses of the
Apocalypse.
You got it. Okay, thanks. I'm tongue-tied. And Dr. John Gottman came up with 4 of them, and that's one of them, is stonewalling. And he says in 7 years, 95% of relationships will fail if one of those 4 horsemen exist. And that's one of them.
And what's the other ones?
I don't remember right off. It's been a long day. I've been talking to customers all morning. I didn't have time to prepare for this.
By the way, what do you do? I build walls. I'm a wall builder.
Okay, so ask you, how does a lack of emotional self-control affect you is the question, because it does hugely. So last night, are you tickling my bottom? Oh, it's a dog. Oh, okay.
That's Riley. Yeah,
All right,
Riley's
yeah.
tickling your bottom.
So last night, I started to work yesterday at 8. I got home last night at 10 o'clock, and I was doing dishes and cleaning up food from the boardwalk, and it's 10:10 at this time. And my son comes upstairs, and I'm putting away leftovers. My hands are all got chicken juice on them, and my son goes, "Hey, can you help me with something for 2 minutes?" And I go, "I'm standing there, no." And it was just that no, like hello, that was did not exhibit emotional self-control at all. I mean, I could have emotionally, if I would have stopped for a second, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, I would have said, bud, I am a little bit busy right now, so give me a minute, but I didn't do that.
I've had to do a lot of, my dad was one of my heroes, but he reacted that way quite often. No, I don't have time for it right now. A much better way would have been exactly what you just said.
Yeah,
Hang on, I'm right in the middle of something. Let me at least wash my hands and get
and
back home, and then we'll talk.
the third question we have is, how does your Colossians 3:12-15?
Yeah,
Can
thank
you-
you, Troy.
If you not type it out, but if you cut and paste it real quick, Believe it or not, we don't have our Bibles here right now.
And
Because
I
we have a
usually-
very short show, and I don't
I
want to do
usually use my phone, but
yeah,
I got one of
just
my
cut
other
and paste
pages.
Colossians 3,
Yeah,
12 to
yeah,
15. Clothe yourself with compassion, kindness. Yes, I think that's it, right? Clothe yourself with, right? And then the last question is, how does your lack of self-control affect others? And again, my son was really hurt by that. He goes, okay, fine, bye. And he just went downstairs and tried to talk to him this morning, and he was still upset. But how does your lack of self-control affect others? John, are you looking up something or what?
Yeah, I was Googling something that might have been helpful, but I'm going to go ahead and,
Tell me, how does your lack of self-control affect others? So,
well, we hurt people.
hurt people, right?
Exactly.
Hurt people.
Everyone that we encounter is struggling with something, and why do we want to make our load on them worse than it already is?
Yeah.
And so I have a motto, and in the dating world, I really believe on this, and I think that we should strive to do this, that if we're in a relationship with someone, whether it's 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, we need to strive that during that relationship, and especially how we end it, if it does come to an end, that we try to leave people better off than we found them. Mm-hmm. And I have seen too many people in the name of Jesus Christ, somehow when they end the relationship, they go, it's over, it's done, it's in the past.
You talk about that a lot.
And they think, well, that gives me a free license to treat this person really bad. And here's how I want you guys to look at this. Okay, so if you're in a relationship, when I hear people say that, I'm thinking, oh, so they're not brothers and sisters of Christ anymore? Just because they're not dating? Because they're not engaged?
Right.
Oh, because you know what? If you take a marriage relationship, we put that on one level. If we take an engaged relationship, put it right below that. If we put right below that a serious dating relationship, below that casual. Let's say all those relationships are done, they're in the past. Guess what? If you're a brother and sister in Christ, you still have a relationship. And folks, guess what? God has extremely high standards for brother and sister in Christ relationships. He doesn't say just be kind if you're engaged. He doesn't say be patient only if you're married. Or what about the one where it says if your brother's offended you and you got to leave your gift at the altar?
Man,
He doesn't say you only do that if you're really thinking about getting married down the road.
Right.
No, God has really high standards. And so, you can learn so much about a person in how they leave a relationship. That may tell you more about that person's character than the entire time you were with them.
Ooh.
Amen. I believe that's a red flag, we call that, right?
Oh, wow. That was good.
Very
huh?
good stuff.
All right.
I'm going
he's
to have to
a little-
rewind this show and
Little
watch
doctor,
it.
little doctor, little preacher. Yeah, he's all good.
Appreciate
My
it.
dad was a pastor.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Where?
Liberty, Missouri.
Oh, you're from Missouri?
Liberty, Missouri, where Jesse James made the world's first daylight bank robbery. And by the way, Jesse James was a preacher's kid, so watch out for those preacher's
Really?
kids. Yeah, he
Those
was.
PKs
man.
are always the worst.
I know, right? So,
He's a PK.
I think, boy, on this issue of emotional self-control, as I was thinking and preparing about this topic today, I think over the years, I've gotten much better with other people. But what helps me to be good with other people is the personal and emotional self-control I practice from within. Because again, if I let everything that people say about me, or if I let every offense or every possible or potential offense affect me emotionally or mentally, I dwell on that and I let it simmer and boil over, then my own lack of self-control internally, of course, other people get to experience it. And I hope that within Bridges, for single adults out there, and for the people at the boardwalk, if you're married, engaged, or committed, that you really would just slow down and take a breath, not take everything so personal. Things are rarely as bad as we feel like like in other words, I might be angry about that, but if I really thought about it, I shouldn't be nearly as upset as I am about it, right? Or nearly as stressed out, or nearly as frustrated, or anxious, or depressed. So it's really a big deal because what's inside leaks out with other people, and it does affect our relationships, but it affects us, I think, the most.
And if it just sits there and starts leaking out like batteries in an old flashlight, it corrodes everything and becomes finally unusable.
And John, since you're our special guest, and one more time I'm going to say this, there's a difference between boundaries and barriers. And again, you can make a boundary with a person and say, well, John loaned me $20. He's like, okay, fine. And then I said, well, can I borrow 50? He's like, well, maybe. Then he's like, John, can I borrow 100? He's like, no. He can have those kind of boundaries, but if he's carrying around being offended that I asked him for 50, and he's angry that I asked him for 100, then he's bearing a load, he's bearing all the stress, and I'm fine. I'm like, okay, he said no, I'll get it from Charlie.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
You'll cheat somebody else.
Yeah, so.
Now, Michael, one thing I wanted to hit before we leave, because there's very short time left, I want to talk about solutions.
You're right.
Hey,
Solutions.
How do we deal with the triggers? Now, if you go out and you buy a couple hundred books or whatever, and you read about triggers, you're going to have a hard time. They'll talk about them, but they're not going to tell you what to do with them. Okay, so we're going to hit that real quick because time is short. But the solution really is comfort. I talked to Pastor Bob.
Like fried chicken? Like dark chocolate?
Gravy.
Gravy.
Gravy, okay. Gravy, you're from the South.
Poor John, he doesn't know what to do. Okay,
Bakersfield.
My dad is from Tennessee, but I'm not from the South.
I'm not Tennessee.
But Pastor Bob of Destiny told me once, he says, I've been counseling people in my office for decades, and he says, one thing everybody has in common and they come in for, they're really looking for comfort. They're looking for comfort. Oh. And so the way we deal with our triggers is we comfort ourselves or others in their triggers, and that is what turns down the emotional thermostat over a period of time.
We comfort others?
And ourselves.
And ourselves.
So let's start with ourselves. The first thing we do self-comfort. How do we do that? We have to tell ourselves the truth about God's character. Who is God? And what does he think or feel about the situation? And who is he? And so for myself, if I want to have an answer quick about how God feels about something, go out and pick up one of these. I guess you could probably get it on Amazon. But quick scripture reference for counseling. And then you can look up a topic, and you can find out what God says about it, and then you can reinforce and comfort yourself with truth. Because we want to have truth, not feelings.
That's why Paul says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, excellent, worthy of praise, think about these things, he says. He emphasizes it. Then the peace of God will be with you.
Now, here's the second thing. We want comfort from others, because we're not always in the proper state of mind to comfort ourselves. I mean, because when we're emotionally stressed, sometimes a person can be highly intelligent, very brilliant, but they just can't get out of the emotions to come up with the answers. And that's where someone else that's in the more rational state can come into their life, interject, and give them comfort. Now, I'm going to give you an example of comforting someone, and that's kind of really pragmatic. So, no, it's not like that at all.
FarmersOnly.com.
But this is an example of kind of a conflict comforting, okay? So let's say that I'm driving down the road, and I'm a really protective person, and I really want my passengers and me to be safe, and I really care about that. And someone cuts me off, and we get killed by almost that much. Almost, escape death by that much. And so I'm mad. It's like they almost killed us. And so I'm wanting to yell in the car, something like that. Okay, and so let's say I got a date next to me, and she's saying, Jonathan, calm down. You're going to get ourselves killed. Okay, so I've got some triggers going on. Number one, I got the trigger of the crazy guy that almost killed us. Number two, I got my mom over there now, right?
I got my mom over
That's my second trigger. My date is like my mom. She's,
oh
my God, just licked me in the mouth.
So I'm triggered because that's what my mom would have done. She would have told me how to behave.
Yeah, exactly.
So now
that's why I laughed. I got it.
I'm trying to deal with two triggers now. And so now the thing is, can she help me? Now, maybe or maybe not, because I might have triggered her. I probably did. But if she was in the state of maturity that's greater than mine, that could have calmed me down, this is what she could do. She could just reach over, and I'm not going to do it to you, put her left hand on my thigh, and just say, Jonathan, God's going to get him. Don't worry about it. We're safe. God protected us, didn't he? We're good.
That's
okay.
right. Amen.
And comfort us with
finding
comfort the person instead.
A life partner that actually has that kind of personality would be a huge blessing.
Well, Emerson English.
I've got Charlie's phone number. If you can be that kind of life partner for Charlie, just message me privately on Facebook, and we'll connect you two.
Well, those situations are hard, and like who takes the responsibility to fix it? Dr. Emerson English, who wrote the book Love and Respect, said this. He said, when this situation comes up, whose responsibility? And he says, well, I didn't get this from the Bible, but I'm sure it's not from the devil. So I would suggest whoever initiate the solution be the one who considers himself the most mature.
Interesting. So I think that's a great illustration of what it means to love one another.
Dick
To provide
Carno,
comfort.
hello.
To provide comfort for one another is actually loving one another.
Absolutely.
As opposed to setting each other up. Yeah, that's really
And we
good.
all need to give it to one another, and smart people, spiritual people, all need it. I mean, I know a gal right now who's highly intelligent. She's an engineer. She's got incredible perceptions in relationships. But sometimes after she's had a bad date, she's kind of a little emotionally vulnerable at the time. And she would be a great counselor from somebody else, but she's in the emotional state, and she needs someone in the rational state to speak into her life and give her comfort.
Yeah, good. So, I said this at Bridges on Sunday night, but I'm doing my third study on Genesis now. We're going verse by verse, and it's going to take a year or whatever. But the more I read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, the more I feel like I don't really need it. There's just one phrase that would work. Love God, love others. That's it.
And on that note, gotta go. Thank you for joining us. Next week, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Pacific time. Join us again for Relationship Essentials.
We want to thank John Webb for being here.
Thank you,
Bridges,
guys.
if you're single, Bridges is on Thursday night. This
In Elk
Thursday,
Grove.
tomorrow night in Elk Grove at 7 o'clock at Impact Community Church. If you're single and you live in the Roseville, Auburn area, whatever, Sunday nights at 6. If you're married, the Boardwalk has people coming from all over the place.
That'd be great if there was a website or Facebook page we could go to with all that
Yeah,
information.
you could. You can go to ptlb.com. There you go. You guys have a great week and go in God's grace. Enjoy the weather. See you next time.
PTLB.com.
That's right.
God bless. See you on the radio.